The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
You know, they say it's the most wonderful time of the year. I would argue that this is the strangest week of the year. Nobody works. A lot of people just don't even work the month of December. You should try to get anything done in sales the month of December if you haven't. I do it in minor league baseball. Everybody's just gone. Screw it, I'm out. They wipe their hands of it. And this week is the weirdest of all because you got a handful of people that are working right now, but by and large, it's sort of the streets is like post-apocalyptic here in Southern California, which is nuts. Those of you that have any measure of experience in Los Angeles, you know you never see the streets empty, and they are just barren right now. It is terrifying. It is like somebody set off a device that wiped out. Oh, we Thanos'd it. Somebody Thanos'd the area. So I take the dog out for a walk in the morning, and it's just like me, the dog, and nothing but a strong breeze. And yet here we are with regular NBA schedule resuming today. This is such a weird time of year because you had Monday with no games. You had Christmas Day yesterday where there were games all day long, but it was just one game every moment of the day. And now you segue into a 10-game Wednesday card, a 5-game Thursday card. What is it, a 9? 10? I think it's 10 again on Friday, if memory serves. So things go just right back to normal, like nothing changed. But only half the people are working right now. You know, there's 7 games on New Year's Eve with some oddly timed, some of them are in the afternoon. Then New Year's Day, it's still normal. Everything's just normal. Even though for the rest of us, things are pretty different. So anyway, we roll right on into this thing. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. Hoop-ball.com is the website. Check it out if you haven't before. I think you have, but I'm guessing some of you found the podcast and still haven't actually navigated over to the website where we call home. Website that we call home. Doesn't matter. Hoop-ball.com. And of course, thank you as always to Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, the proud title sponsor of all of our shows here at Hoop Ball, and we have a few of them now. It's not just me. If you haven't already, please do check out the box score breakdown. Over this Christmas break, Neil Rochlani rolling solo for a couple of days, well into the night. Suddenly a podcast. I was just about ready to go to bed last night, tucking myself in here at like 11:15 Pacific time. Yeah, that's right. I got to go to bed early. The kid's going to get me up at 7, so I better try to get my sleep in. I know, I'm lucky. You say, oh, your kid sleeps into 7. That's amazing. Yeah, okay. Well, he goes down at like 9:30 at night. He's not on a normal kid schedule yet. And then all of a sudden a podcast pops up. What the hell? Who's doing a podcast right now at 11 o'clock at night? Neil Rochlani. Lunatic. But our kind of lunatic. So check out Box Score Breakdown. If you're trying to figure out where to find it, honestly, the easiest way is just to follow at Hoopball Fantasy and at Hoopball Tweets. We send the podcast out, the link on those channels in the end of the evening. You can also follow at Ball with Neil. That's Neil's Twitter handle, and I would presume he retweets it when it goes out because he's tagged in it. And that's out right after the games end, which is so cool. I know I do my tweet storm, which is a similar thing, but you got a whole show. You just fire it up as you're getting yourself ready for bed. You got Neil breaking down the games for you. What's on tap for today? It's Wednesday. It's Big Wednesday. It's Medium Wednesday. 10 games on the docket. We've got revenge angles at play. We've got yesterday to recap the 5 Christmas Day games. And we have a full mailbag. I mean, it is stuffed. I sent out a tweet at about a little less than 2 hours ago. And we've got like 30 questions that have come in already. So I'm going to do my best to get to as many of them as possible. I make no promises, and obviously, those of you that sent your questions in early will probably be rewarded as such. I can't figure out why Twitter, they organize responses not in chronological order. It's just like, come on, guys. It's hard to figure this joint out. Who sent things at the different... I don't understand it. Anyway, we're going to try to get to all of them. It's not in chronological order. I just say first come, first serve. But thanks to Twitter, I've got to bounce around if I want to figure out who actually sent what when. You piece of crap service. It's a damn good thing we need you, or we'd stop using you. Twitter. And then, of course, we'll get you ready for tonight. Big Wednesday on tap. Break it all down in a matter of moments. I don't know what the timestamp is on today's show. I'm guessing it'll be pretty close to an hour, but we'll see how it goes. No guests today. We'll have Micah Patria on the podcast tomorrow to get you set for the DFS contest on Friday. I will be in it now that I'm playing with the house money. You suckers. I took it. I got that $30 pot last week, and I'm feeling grand. Everything's coming up Millhouse these days. The revenge angles outside of yesterday went 1 and 2, have been winning. So that's up. I won a DFS contest. Can't stop, won't stop. That's what I'm up to over here. All right, enough of the BS. Let's start with Christmas. Let's go back and take a look at yesterday's 5 games. Milwaukee, and it's a pretty easy day to break down, frankly, because there were only 3 things we were even keeping an eye on, and nothing surprised us. Milwaukee in New York, Bucks favored by 10 going into this game. They won it by 14, so Milwaukee with the cover. Chris Middleton is a wreck right now. He is playing some epically bad basketball, and for that reason, I say buy low. Only problem is, if you're hoop ballers, you probably have a lot of Chris Middleton shares, and so you can't really buy low, but you're not selling right now. His value has tanked from around 25th about a month ago to number 60. Number 60. He's been number 210 over the last month, thanks to the fact that he's shooting a high-volume 33%. He can't even make his free throws late. I mean, the whole thing has just totally come apart for this dude. It's the damnedest thing. Because he's, a high 80s free throw shooter. This is a guy that last year, every year basically of his career, he's been at 88%. He's at 86.7% right now, but he's been 70-something over the last month. He's a 45% career shooter. Yes, his number of three-pointers is up, but he's shooting 37% on those, so that's not really dragging things down on its own. He's just missing, and if you watched that early game yesterday, he missed layups, he missed mid-rangers, he missed three-pointers. He wasn't close. The whole thing is just a disaster right now, and distressed assets, as Brew likes to call them, distressed assets, that's our market. So if you can go out there and you can buy some Chris Middleton, I would say absolutely have at it. This is not going to last forever. This appears to be mental. A lot of times guys will just sort of bust out of it. And all of a sudden they're just ready to go. So don't panic on Middleton. He's going to be fine. Hold the courts. Stay steady. Nothing else going on the Milwaukee side. That's the usual fare. For New York, we're obviously always watching a few key things. Number one, can anybody come for Emmanuel Mudiay's minutes? And the answer right now appears to be no, because he was bad in yesterday's game, and he still played 33 minutes. 11 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, a three-pointer on a very bad shooting day. 5 out of 14? I think I'm looking at 5 out of 14. 5 turnovers. He's also not a good free throw shooter, so we're actually kind of lucky he just didn't take any yesterday. And this is why I've talked about Mudiay being really more of a points league guy, because percentages-wise, he will crush you. He's shooting 46.5% from the field this year and 74% at the free throw line. Both of those are far and away above where we expected him to be. Not above his career highs necessarily, but you're looking at a guy who shot 69% at the free throw line last year. He's around a 73%er, so 74 is not that far off, and that's believable. Field goal percent, he's attempting a career high in three-pointers. He's shooting his second-best percentage from downtown, but from inside the three-point line, he's crushing it. Far and away his best two-point shooting season, and it's not even close. And I'm honestly worried that stuff levels off. And even though he's not a guy who racks up defensive stats, if you're on the floor for 33 minutes, you're going to tumble into about 1 steal per game. So he's sitting right on the cusp, basically. Last month, he's number 180, right? Sometimes the other stuff drags you down. You just sort of don't think about it until it hits you. Last 2 weeks, he's inside the top 100. And this is the darndest thing about 9-category formats, because you really have to be aware of all of the statistical, what it means, the values. This is a dude who's shooting 50% over the last 2 weeks, averaging 22, 4, and 6 with a steal, 1.3 three-pointers on only 2.6 turnovers. Not great, but not terrible. But a high-volume 72.5% at the free throw line, and that's yanking him back down to the edge of the top 100. If you're not good at percentages, and he's not, you have to be way over the top in some category to counterbalance that. That's why Andre Drummond is drafted early, because in rebounds and defensive stats, he's so good that it doesn't matter that he kills you in one category. It matters. It just, doesn't matter as much. Where with Moutier, if he's bad at free throw percent, he's not doing enough in any of the other categories to make up for it. So, points league. Kevin Knox, similar. He's scoring, and he's doing some rebounding. He's just firing away right now, but he's not doing much else, which makes him more of a points league kind of guy. I know you guys are like, what are you talking about, Dan? This is a guy that's setting rookie records for the Knicks. He's matching Patrick Ewing because he's scored 20 points in 8 consecutive games or something like that. I think it was 15 or more points in 8 consecutive games. And yet, despite that, he's sitting right around the edge of the top 100. And I don't know how much higher he can go right now, because he's playing monster minutes, and he's taking a truckload of shots. You almost need him to play these same minutes, maybe dial the shots back a tiny bit, worry less about scoring 20 points, and try to get a steal or a block somewhere along the way. He's like a very poor man's Niko Mirotic, because he's not really rebounding, and he's turning the ball over a little bit more. So that's not even a good comparison. That's a terrible comparison, in fact. I don't even know who he is. There's no viable... He's like Dario Saric with worse percentages. So, and again, more geared towards points league. How much more could you ask of this kid? He's not going to average 25 points a game. It's just not going to happen. And he's going to run out of gas at some point soon. So people in 9-category leagues are definitely overusing Kevin Knox right now. The fact that he's owned in every single one of my competitive 9-category leagues is people overreaching. And it's the magic of one category. If you score 22 points a game for a couple of weeks, people are like, I got to use you. But that's really only 50% over what it's going to take to win your league in points. You probably need like about 16 points per game to win your Roto points category. A little bit more than that, maybe, depending on how shallow or competitive your league might be, but it's around that number. So 22, I mean, that's not even 50% over. 50% over would be 24 points if he was averaging that mark. Think about that when it comes to some other category. This is the mental gymnastics we're going to do this morning to try to show you how little points actually matter. Kevin Knox is averaging 22 points per game over the last week, which is 22 over 16. So it's about, well, let's see, 40% of 16 would be 6.4. So yeah, it's about 40% over what it takes to win your league in points in Roto. That's what he's contributing there. What's 40% over what it would take to win your league in some other statistical category? This is the game we're going to play today. It's going to be, what does 22 points per game actually mean if you converted that to another statistical category? Well, I'm going to look at one of my fairly competitive 12-team leagues. It's 12-team, 5-bench slot league. So it plays relatively deep, but it's a games cap league. So it's a 12-teamer. Let's just call it that. And to win, okay, 3-pointers. We'll just start right at the front end of this thing right now. The team that's winning 3-pointers is averaging 1.65 3-pointers per game. Multiply that by 40%, So 1.4, and that's 2.3. That's the same value in a different statistical category. So someone averaging 2.3 three-pointers per game over that stretch, which, by the way, is exactly what Kevin Knox is doing in that department, but that's not the point we're making here. That has the same positive impact as 22 points per game. It seems almost mind-blowingly crazy to think of it like that. That averaging 22 points per game has the same positive impact as hitting 2.3 three-pointers per game. That's bonkers, right? It seems like it would need to be higher. It has to be. How can that possibly be the case? But it's true. And if you look at Basketball Monster has the tools to show you this right now. I mean, it lays it all out there right for you on the line. Someone averaging 2.3 three-pointers per game has the same positive impact as somebody averaging about 22 points per game. It's crazy. It's about one standard deviation or so above league average, roughly 50% above what it takes to win your league. That's how that's playing out. What about the other statistical categories? What would you need to be one deviation above in rebounds? You need a guy averaging 9 rebounds a game, which I'll admit is harder to find this year. What about assists? What would it take for you to be about that same level above in assists per game? It's a little over 5. It's very close to 5 on the nose, I believe, if I'm running my numbers properly. It's like 5.5, maybe? Am I getting that right? Around 5.5? Okay. All right, that's a little tougher to find. Steals? About 1.5. You're looking at 1.5 steals per game. Blocks? This one's a crazy one, right? I mean, you get... it doesn't take much to be well above. Basically one. About 1 block a game. 1.0, 1.1, something like that gets you to about what it would take to win blocks in your league. Madness, right? Madness. So a little bit it comes down to, number of guys that actually can perform that particular feat. But this is an interesting game to play. How many guys... How hard is it to find a guy that can get you to that mark? 1.1 blocks per game? 1.2? Easy. But there are fewer guys that can get above that mark. 22 points per game? Okay, fine. There aren't that many guys that are going to average that mark, but it has the same positive impact as those other numbers I just threw at you. Frankly, I'd rather turn that into some other category that's harder to find. I'd rather turn a 22-point-per-game score into somebody shooting 52% from the field at a decent volume. To me, that would have a better impact on my team. So anyway, this is not all the pick on Kevin Knox. Not at all. In fact, he's playing really well right now, but he's also being wildly overvalued because of one statistical category. Still, he's playing a ton, and he's putting up big numbers in a points league format, and you just hope that maybe something else falls into place along the way. I would just guess that he runs out of gas first. Noah Vonleh's still chugging along. Ennis Cantor's okay, but not great. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not shooting at all well, but he's out there, so you're good on that front. Oklahoma City and Houston, the only thing I was keeping an eye on in this one was Austin Rivers, and he played 31 minutes in his first game for Houston. That's a real positive sign. He also falls into more of a points leaguey bucket because, like some of the other guys we've been talking about here, he doesn't shoot the ball very well from any place. He's a career 64% foul shooter. He's a career 42% shooter from the field. The question is opportunity. And if this is the opportunity he's getting and likely could increase, they liked the defense he played on Russell Westbrook in yesterday's game, he could end up jumping guys like Daniel House. He could take minutes away. He's going to take minutes away from Gerald Green. There's no question about that. His defense is better. He's just younger. And there might be nights where Eric Gordon is so terrible that he takes minutes from him as well. So in a points league format, I'm picking up Austin Rivers, and I'm just letting this thing ride. And we'll see what happens to him when Chris Paul comes back. But this is a really good sign. I mean, out there for 31 minutes. He only took 6 shots. I think that number probably goes up as he gets more comfortable. I don't think James Harden wants to take 35 shots a game. That's an exhausting value, and Eric Gordon took a lot of ill-advised shots in yesterday's contest. So maybe that helps move the ball a little bit. So points league guy, percentages are so terrible, I just can't give him the 9 category nod. And the only other note from that game that I thought I'd bring up was Nerlens Noel, who played 11 minutes in this wildly competitive game. Steven Adams saw 37, and Nerlens went for 2 points, 2 boards, an assist, 1 steal, and 4 blocks. He did that in 11 minutes, guys. If Steven Adams ever has to miss a game again, man alive. Philly-Boston, no real notes on this one. Wilson Chandler was nuzzling his way close to standard league value for one night, but you're not chasing that. Lakers and Warriors, Ivica Zubac, the reign of the zoo continued. JaVale McGee not quite back up to his energy level. He's still coughing away from pneumonia. I personally hope he'll be back. I mean, we're talking about what was a 4-game week for the Lakers. They play again tomorrow. On Thursday, they're up in Sacramento. I'm sure they'd love to get McGee back for that one. I don't think they can use the same strategy they used in the last one. And at some point, I mean, you could pick up Zubac and then just not start him if McGee does make his return tomorrow. But he does appear to be in front of Tyson Chandler right now, who's dealing with a back issue. So it's sort of Zubac or bust. Rajon Rondo had 15 and 10 in this ballgame. That's enough to ruin the value of Lonzo Ball, but not enough for you to say, oh, well, this is going to happen every night. But LeBron did leave the game with a strained groin, so he might miss a week or two. I know that he's sort of superhuman and never misses time, but he also realizes this is a long game, and his Lakers are actually in better position at Christmas time than I'm imagining he thought. Lakers are 20 and 14. They're currently in 4th place in the Western Conference. So if LeBron has to miss 2 weeks and the Lakers go 2 and 5, they'd probably survive it. Wouldn't be a great thing, but they'd make it. If LeBron does miss time, you're going to see a lot of inefficient stuff going on in Los Angeles. You're going to see a ton of shots for Brandon Ingram. You're going to see more Rondo. You're going to see more Lonzo. It's going to be weird. And what I would say is, because there's so many screwball options on this team, you just wait and see, and then make your play in like the third quarter of the Lakers game tomorrow. You could see who actually is going to be doing stuff by about the 35-minute mark of the ball game. I don't think there's a guy that you're out there and you're just racing to pick up. If anybody, I guess it would be Rondo, because they'll need somebody to orchestrate a little bit more. But again, I think you can use a wait-and-see approach. I'd be surprised if Rondo, he's owned in a lot of leagues for some reason. He's been awful this year, and he's owned in every single one of my competitive leagues. It's just the dumbest thing ever. But he might end up being useful here if LeBron misses a week or two. Warriors got whomped. Nothing else to see here. Steph was bad. Durant was not. Everybody was bad except Andre Iguodala, who always plays well when LeBron is in town. Portland, Utah. This one, I thought this one was going to be a better ball game. And Utah just hit everything. They shot 55% for the game. They knocked down 13 3-pointers. I believe they missed 8 3-pointers in the first quarter and then went like 13 for 20 the rest of the game. Some crazy number. Rudy Gobert had 7 blocks. Joe Ingles continued his dominance in Utah. Korver was good off the bench. Exum was good off the bench. This was like, they could almost do no wrong. Meanwhile, for Portland, Al-Farouq Aminu actually had a pretty solid ball game, and then Damian Lillard was okay, and everybody else was awful. C.J. McCollum looked like he was drunk. He looked straight up drunk on the basketball court. He missed his free throws. He had a team-high 4 turnovers. They'd have been better off just benching him for Seth Curry. He actually played well. Not enough minutes to matter, but he played well. And then Yusuf Nurkic. The officiating in this game was super weird, too. There was I don't know if you guys saw that Yusuf Nurkic shot from like 4 feet away that Rudy Gobert literally just grabbed from right out inside of the rim. And then you could see the broadcasters, they were like, well, maybe the officials thought it never had a chance to go in. Nah, man. The officials were drunk as hell in that game too. That was crazy. And nobody cared. I get it. Because, who really gives a crap? But that was part of a little miniature Portland run. We could have actually had a ball game. These little things go a long way to stem momentum in a basketball game. See if you can go back and find that shot I'm talking about. It was probably going to come up short. But, maybe. If you grabbed a 3-pointer that appeared to be coming down just a foot, 6 inches short of the rim, and you grabbed it 3 feet in front of the rim, that would still get called goaltending. You have to catch that below the rim, guys. So that was pretty weird. And then nobody cared because nobody could believe it. They were all just like, what just happened? Nobody blew a whistle, nothing. Even the Jazz were like, do we get to keep going? All right, tonight. That was yesterday. Again, not a whole lot going on Christmas Day. Tonight, you got this 10-game card. Phoenix is in Orlando. Magic favored by 5 in that ball game. Washington, Detroit, Pistons 5-point favorites. Brooklyn laying 1.5 to Charlotte at home. Indiana 7-point favorites on the road. Toronto a 3.5-point favorite in Miami. Chicago 4.5-point underdog to the visiting Minnesota Timberwolves in the Derrick Rose return game. Believe it or not, by the way, he's only played 1 game back in Chicago. A lot of injured time in there. Memphis, 10.5 points. That's the line they're laying at home against Cleveland. Dallas, 2.5-point favorites at home, hosting the New Orleans Pelicans. Spurs by 3.5, and the Clippers by 5.5 over the Sacramento Kings. 6 revenge games on the docket today. The Suns in Orlando. They are 5-point underdogs. That line opened, I believe, at 4, and then it has actually moved in Orlando's favor, which we'll find out whatever the hell that means. The Hawks are a revenge game against Indiana, which feels like just an awful bet to make, but you know what? We're tracking all of them. Miami's on revenge against Toronto. They lost earlier to the Raptors. The Bulls lost to the Wolves earlier this year. They got beat up pretty good up in Minnesota, and they've actually been playing okay. Meanwhile, Zach LaVine also questionable for this game, which is a really good piece of news that he's even considering a return right at the front end of his 2 to 4 week timetable. That's great news. Mavericks got blown out by the Pelicans last month. They're on revenge. That's probably the one that feels the safest to me, which means it's probably going to be the one that loses out of the 6. And then the Kings lost to the Clippers earlier this year. They're in LA looking for a little bit of revenge. That should be a pretty good game, too. Clippers are playing better right now. And 238, that's your total for that one. You're going to see a ton of points in that ball game. I love the Kings catching 5.5. The only problem is that in a game that fast, 5.5 points can go in a blink. So we're tracking all of those revenge angles. Dallas and Sacramento probably feel like the safest of the bunch, but we'll see how it goes. From a fantasy perspective, we're watching Jonathan Isaac, Mikal Bridges, Josh Jackson, Kelly Oubre, all of those guys in that first game, Phoenix, Orlando. That's probably your homework game tonight, guys, frankly. Washington, Detroit, always curious what's going on with the Wizards, although it sounds like no Otto Porter, so probably will be about the same as what we saw in the last one. Charlotte, Brooklyn, not much there. Nothing with Detroit. Indiana, Atlanta, I'm actually benching Darren Collison in favor of Mikal Bridges in one of my leagues. And I gotta see Collison care. He's floating along, man. I had a dream over this Christmas break that I woke up to news that Indiana had traded Corey Joseph, and I was celebrating, and then I woke up and it wasn't real. Toronto, Miami, we're watching like a hawk to see what's actually going to shake out there. Tyler Johnson's been playing well. He got really hot in their last ball game. Justice Winslow, he runs hot and cold. Kelly Olynyk, he's seen his minutes dialed back a tiny bit with James Johnson starting to look a little bit healthier. The log jam is getting more jammy. But at least Hassan Whiteside seems okay lately. Even if he can't make a free throw, he's playing again. So there's another log jam. Whiteside and Bam at the center position. And with those two guys taking all the center minutes, that means that Olynyk is left to the power forward spot. And if James Johnson's playing well, then that slices into his. And so we might be seeing Olynyk starting to push back down into that 20 to 22 range instead of 28. All of these things need to be watched. I am, if I have the choice, benching Kelly Olynyk in some spots. But he's also a guy that could resurface, and he has that crazy high fantasy ceiling. So not a drop, definitely a hold. But if you're in a games cap format, and for me, I have a team that has Tristan Thompson and JV both out, so I'm down to just 2 centers instead of 4. So I got to trot them both out there, and Olynyk is one of them. If I had the option of starting any of my other centers, I would right now. Minnesota, Chicago. Sounds like Derrick Rose is ready to go. I don't think Jeff Teague is playing in this game. Sounds like he's being reevaluated on Friday, which means if Rose is playing, he should have a pretty big ball game. If Zach LaVine plays, he could have a really big ball game as well. Cleveland, Memphis. Do I care? Not really. Not really. I guess we can watch Jermichael Green. I mean, we're always watching the big man minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies. Dallas, New Orleans, nothing there. Denver, San Antonio, nothing there, really. And Sacramento and LA, also nothing there, really. I think we've sort of the fantasy landscape has largely moved on from Gilgeous-Alexander with Avery Bradley and Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams all healthy right now. And Gilgeous hitting a little bit of, I don't know if you call it a rookie wall, but teams are making an adjustment. I think he's going to be a pretty good basketball player. I like some of what I've seen from him on the court. His game doesn't translate to fantasy all that well yet. Mailbag time. We got a ton of them. So many mailbag questions. I'm going to refresh the page just to make sure I haven't missed any. But last I saw, it was like 25. So, here we go. Hey, before I do that, 'tis the season of giving, so 2 things you could potentially give, 3, honestly. One of them is free. The free thing you could give would be a lovely rating or review to this podcast that you're listening to, on whatever format you listen to it on. I think many of you use iTunes. That's probably the big boy of the podcast community, and that's the one that drives a lot of the listenership. So if you have a moment to pop on there, either the podcast app on your mobile device or if you're just listening on iTunes on a PC, find the rating and review button and leave us a nice positive one. We'll be thankful until the next Christmas season. And then the 2 things you could give during the season of giving that actually cost money: Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. At HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. At HI Kona Coffee. Chat them up, man. You want to talk fantasy sports? Talk to those guys. They're crazy about it. And then you can also search for them on Amazon. Just search for Hawaiian Isles. And the third thing you could gift would be the gift of fantasy knowledge. You can do that at Hoopball with the in-season premium membership. There's a record high number of you that have access this year, and we want to keep that number growing. There are 2 ways you can get it. Just go to the website and buy it. That's one way, hoop-ball.com. Click on the Premium tab and choose Go Premium. The options are right there. One of them says Get In-Season Premium Membership. You can buy it right on that page. The other one is the Get It Free option, which you can do through DraftKings, and I'll tell you more about that on tomorrow's podcast when we have Micah Patria on the show, and we're talking a little more DFS. Today, mailbag time, and again, no particular order on these things. Twitter is not putting them chronologically, so I'm going to do my very best. But it looks like... Is this all of them? I'm hoping I got all the replies in here. I really would like to see all of them. And oh, Twitter, you just make it so freaking complicated. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and let's see what actually lines up. This is me on Twitter.com, and this is how they line up the questions. So again, no particular order other than what these... the Twitter overlords have decided. Sukjit says, Jeremy Lamb's kind of been all over the place lately, but still startable, obviously. What do you think about his long-term outlook? Well, as with many players who sit kind of in that middle of the pack range, there are going to be big months and there are going to be little months. And right now we're in a little bit more of a little month. His shooting percentage has been coming down over the last 30 days. He's shooting 43%, where he was up around 45 before that. But he's still a very good foul shooter, so he's always helping you in that department. And there are going to be the ups and downs. He's a wonderful 9-category asset. He's number 59 in 9-cat after briefly being inside the top 50 on the year. But this, to me, is more, I think, what you should expect of him. He's a very low turnovers guy, averages just 0.9 per game. The assists fluctuate between 0 and 5 and settle generally in between, around 2. He's a decent rebounder who has good games and bad games, oftentimes depending on A, how his team is doing, and B, what type of player he's guarding on the other side. Does it allow him to be back closer to the rim, or is he out chasing three-point shooters? He's going to knock down about 1.5 3-pointers per game. He's not shooting a ton from out there, and he's a great foul shooter. So, it's all sort of decent stuff across the board. That's the Jeremy Lamb magic, and again, very good in turnovers, free throw percent, and then solid in a couple other statistical categories. So I think you're seeing basically the guy you're going to get, which is around number 60, and I don't think I'd move off of him. I don't think that I'd buy low right now. I think that we saw that hot month. Now we're seeing a cool one, and they balance out. Next question. Chris Dunn has been kicking some fanny lately. Thank you for cleaning that up. While Rubio continues to poop his pants in field goal percent. Does either trend reverse in 2019? No. Ricky Rubio is not a good shooter. That's sort of the bottom line on that one. He's a career 38.5% shooter from the field, and he's right around the mark he's been at the last couple of seasons right now at 40%. He shot 41.8% last year. I mean, there's a universe where he could actually get that number up to, 41. But even his good days tend to be right around 50%, and that's hard when you're not, you had that one big one in Portland where he went 10 for 15, but generally he floats in awfully close, in fact, to his season-long mark on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't help that he's actually averaging a career high in three-pointers attempted, but, as I just mentioned with Jeremy Lamb, he's a very good foul shooter. His assists are up this year over last year. He's at 6.4. He's never going to be up around Minnesota days, 8.5 to 9 assists per game. But if he's taking 11 shots per game, which is a little bit higher than usual. This is sort of who he is now. I think when you look at his numbers, the one thing you could hope for would be the turnovers coming down. They've been awfully high for Rubio lately, and they're always really high. The problem is that in the past, when he was averaging 3 turnovers a game, he was at 9 assists. It was a 3-to-1 ratio. Now he's at 6, and so the assist-to-turnover ratio is closer to 2-to-1, and that's not good enough. He's been particularly bad at taking care of the basketball lately. Over his last 5 games, he's at 24 turnovers. That's a lot. And so, while I do believe you could do a little bit of a buy low on Rubio with the expectation that his turnover number might come down a little bit, I think the other stuff is pretty damn close to where he's going to sit for the season. He's not going to rebound a ton because you've got Gobert and Favors on the floor a lot of the time. It's just, this is his role now. So I think you're looking at more of a top 100-y kind of guy, and he's at 120, I think, right now. Chris Dunn is just going to get better. I mean, we're seeing a guy who's just beginning to settle in with health on his side. So, no, I don't see that trend reversing at all. I think Chris Dunn is on his way up. He's ranked number 116 in 9 category leagues right now because a couple of low minutes games where he was getting his legs back under him are mixed in there. He's going to be awesome. He's number 76 over the last 2 weeks. He's number 50 over the last week. I think there's a very real chance that he's a top 50 fantasy guy this year. Even in 9-cat, he might be able to sneak in there. Maybe not. Maybe more like top 60 in 9-cat because I think the turnovers go up from 2 to probably 2.5. But this is a guy who's going to be getting you 6 to 8 assists per game at full health, most likely. Let's call it 6. He's a very good rebounding point guard. I don't think he's going to average the 7 he has over the last week, but 4.5, 5 is very much within his reach. You're looking at probably 14 to 16 points per game. He doesn't shoot the three-pointer, so if that's what you were banking on, don't get used to it. He averaged just 0.8 a game last year, and he's below that this season. But he can get to the rim, so the field goal percent should be better this year than last year. Free throw percent has been improving each of his seasons in the NBA, and maybe the thing that's the most fun about Chris Dunn is as he gets himself settled in, he is a massive steals guy, too. Huge defensive presence. So, no, I don't see that turning around. I mean, I think floor is top 75 for 9-cat, and then you could see him as high as top 50. He's an exciting player to own right now, and hopefully a lot of people were able to hang on or even potentially stash him. He's a difference maker. Will the Cavaliers shut down Kevin Love down the stretch? This is a loaded question. This is from Amin. He's going to miss almost, I guess it'd be about 3 months. Let's see, November, December, half of January. He's going to miss like 2.5 months with surgery. So there's going to be a balancing act here with Kevin Love. And my prediction is that you're going to see him probably skip back-to-backs. It's a nice, easy opportunity for the Cavaliers to tank a game while also giving Love a little bit of rest. And then down the stretch, I mean, I don't think that there's going to be what you'd call a traditional shutdown. There hasn't been as much of that lately because the league's been trying to crack down on it a little bit. But I think you're going to see him take a game off every week. And then almost for sure he'll miss the last 1 or 2 games of the year. So he's not going to play a ton, but I also don't think that we're going to get to like March 20th and then the Cavs are going to be like, okay, you're done for 2.5 weeks. I'd be surprised if they just totally pulled the plug on him, considering how many games he's already missed. Tanking is a fine art. And the Cavs, with Love missing 2.5 months here at the beginning of the year, they've sort of set themselves up to not have to worry about it as much later. Unfortunately, there are a couple of the teams in the NBA that are just equally brutal, but the Cavs at 8-26 are tied for the worst record in the NBA right now. I think that teams sometimes need a little bit of a better taste in their mouths, and so when Love is healthy, I think you're going to see a lot of him between mid-January and the end of March, and then, there's going to be games off here and there, and that last silly season week, I think he probably plays half of those games. So my guess would be, if Kevin Love comes back in about 2 weeks, let's say 2 weeks is when he makes his return, and they'll ramp him up, his minutes will ramp up probably over the span of the next 4 games after that. So call it 3 weeks, he'll be at about regular strength, because he got to get his conditioning back. That puts us at about, 34. They played 34 games, so that'll be just a little bit over half the games in the season. So of the remaining, let's call it 40 or so games, I think he plays in 30 or more, maybe 32 of them. If you're in a head-to-head league, he's going to be problematic. If you're in a roto league, you're this close, so you roll him out there, and you're not going to dump him. You want to see what the situation is, right? What are you going to do with him right now? Are you going to sell him to somebody? Nah, nobody's going to want to buy him from you. He's a distressed asset. You can't sell a guy like that. This would be more of a time to buy him for nothing. Maybe that's the angle you're coming at from here. Throw a top 100 guy out there. I doubt the owner's going to part now that we're only a couple weeks away from his return. That would have been something you could have done a month and a half ago. Because when Kevin Love is playing for what we assume will be about 2 to 2.5 months, he's going to be a top 40 guy, maybe better. This Cavs team has crap on it. He's going to be asked to do a boatload. What if he gets hot for 3 weeks? He could be a first-round guy. But yes, here's the thing. In a head-to-head league, you're game planning for a guy. Just assume that he's going to miss 1 game every week of your head-to-head playoffs. If that's still enough for you, fine. Then a top 30 guy is going to play more like a top 75 guy. That's probably still worthwhile. 8-cat head-to-head. This is from Mart. Drop Derek Jones Jr. or Jeff Green for Nerlens Noel or Cody Zeller. Yeah, actually. Not Noel, unfortunately. One of his massive boons is the fact that he's on the floor so little that he can't turn the ball over. He's averaging 0.7 turnovers a game. The defensive stats are outstanding, but one of his big boosts in value is because he doesn't turn the ball over at all. In 8-cat, yes, I think I would. I think I'd like to have Cody Zeller on my team. He's just a very safe, plodding big man who's had a couple of off games. He didn't fare well against the big guys in Detroit, and then Boston blew him out, so he never got back in for his last stretch of time. But he's just out there putting up his usual 10 and 6 every day, and he'll get you most of a steal and most of a block, and his percentages have been good. He's a guy that should probably be used in competitive 12-team leagues, 8 or 9-cat. If you're in a shallower league or a less competitive league, then neither one of those guys is worthwhile, and then Derek Jones Jr. is sort of your upside play. Jeff Green's been playing well. I would go ahead and assume he's going to tail off if or when Otto Porter ever surfaces. So here's what I would say. Right now, I think you probably just sit on your 2 guys and see how this thing plays out over the next week. Because more than likely, if you're eyeballing Nerlens Noel and Cody Zeller and nobody's picked them up yet, they're probably not going to get picked up in the next week unless they do something huge, which, unless Steven Adams goes down, probably isn't happening. How long can there be value for Justice Winslow? This is from Ecstatic Cowboys fan. The answer is 0 time. He's another points league guy. Justice Winslow, when he gets hot, his numbers look outstanding. When he goes cold, he is killing your fantasy team. He's a sub 70% foul shooter. He's a 40% guy from the field. When he has big games, it's tantalizing. That last ball game was huge, 22, 6, and 5 with 4 steals on 9 out of 12 shooting. But look at the 4 games before that, guys. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. If you could pick the days when Winslow's going to get hot, you'd be a genius and your fantasy team would roll. But the other days in there, he's been awful. He shot 1 for 4 at the free throw line combined over those 4 ball games, and from the field, he made 9 shots and he missed 32. No, excuse me, he made 9 out of 32. So it's not quite as bad as I said. But that's still terrible. That's less than a third, slightly more than a quarter. That's like 30%, guys. So it all balances out to a dude who can't shoot. It's not real. He's going to get you rebounds and assists, and he's going to do it with terrible percentages, which sounds a little bit like Emmanuel Mudiay. So roll him out there in a points league, but 9-cat, he's going to kill you. Can Thomas Bryant continue this streak? Well, depends what you mean by streak, because he had that crazy game where he made all 13 of his shots and then came back and had a very hollow 11-7 in only 18 minutes. So the answer is yes to can he continue along this path until Dwight Howard comes back. So you've probably got about a month of a guy who's going to see his minutes bounce around like a crazy person and is going to be outside the top 100. So for me, this is more of a deep league guy. He's not 12-teamer. Paul says, is TJ Warren as a top 40 to 50 guy in 9 category formats, is this a real thing? Yeah, it is. He's a very good percentages guy. He was last year too. He's just very injury prone. But he's going to help you. He's going to average 18 points per game. That's where he's at right now. He's going to get you 4 to 5 rebounds, which is not great from a guy who's sliding over to play some power forward. He doesn't pass because that's the way things operate. But the thing that he changed 2 years ago, and I remember this, 2016, 2017, late in the season, he started racking up steals. And I remember saying, I don't know if this is sustainable or not. I need to see him prove it to me. And then last year, he was able to get a steal and half a block in 32 minutes a game. And, that's enough. 1.6 combined steals and blocks. It's not like, you're not hunting for Anthony Davis with this dude. 1.6 combined is okay. That's reasonable. He's at 1.8 combined this year. Yeah, maybe that comes down a tiny bit, but, he's also ranked number 31 right now, so maybe that comes down a tiny bit. But yeah, inside the top 50 is a very real thing for a good percentages, nice scoring, some defensive stats guy who never turns the ball over. Cool guy to have on your fantasy team. Wildly underrated this year so far. Perhaps people will catch up on that. He's just good now. Doing my best here, guys. I know there's a lot of questions left. My deal for Damian Lillard fell through. Who would be a good target if I'm sending John Collins and Eric Bledsoe together? Someone ranked between 12 and 24. So you're looking for a second rounder. That's your target between those two guys, because Bledsoe is currently ranked number 44, so that's an end of the 4th round value at present. He was drafted in the 4th round in most leagues, so he's ever so slightly underachieving. John Collins also drafted probably around that 4th round, maybe even the 5th in some spots. He's number 101, but obviously he's been playing a lot better than that lately. Huge rebounding numbers for John Collins over the last couple of weeks. Problem is that he's been clanging free throws, and he's not getting any defensive stats. He'll be okay. He's going to work his way, towards top 60 probably valuation. maybe better if the free throw number can come up and the defensive stats can come up. I don't think that I would sell those two guys together right now. I think John Collins has higher to go, and so you might be able to hold on, assume Bledsoe stays ranked somewhere near 40, and as Collins can get his season-long ranking from 100 up to 60-ish, then you could put them together and target someone towards the beginning of the second round, whereas right now, if you put them together, you're probably going to have to shoot for somebody, I said between 12 and 24, but in reality, probably closer to the 20 to 30 range. And to me, I love a good 2-for-1, but you got to do it at the right time. So wait a little bit longer, then put those guys together, and then shoot for a top 15 kind of guy. Fantasy Hoop Bomb says, can Chris Middleton still finish inside the top 35? Can Taurean Prince finish inside the top 60? Donovan Mitchell, top 40? I'm trying to create an all-disappointment team. I'm going to say yes, no, and no to those three guys. Chris Middleton, the body of work is there. The body of work is there. Something's going on betwixt the ears right now, and I think it's going to get fixed because we saw him play at a top 25 clip for a month. And then he's been a top 200 guy for the last month, and that's why he's sitting at number 60. So all he's got to do is get back to what he has done for a year and a half or more, and he'll be fine. Taurean Prince, his big numbers came when everybody else was effectively dead for Atlanta last year. He's going to be better than he has been, right? He had started to actually play a tiny bit better before he suffered that injury. He's number 82 over the couple of weeks before getting hurt. And that's probably more the range you're looking at. Top 90 as opposed to top 60. Donovan Mitchell, and I assume we're talking 9-cat here, was a guy that this one I got right. I thought Prince would be more in that top 70 range, so I think I was off by, I probably shot 2 rounds too high. Donovan Mitchell was one that I warned you guys about. This is one I got right, whereas Prince, I was off by a round or two. Mitchell was going in the second round, and I yelled at, I think it was Adrian on the podcast. I was like, no chance I'm drafting him before 40. No chance. This is a guy last year that was ranked around 60, and everybody's like, oh, sure, he's going to jump 4 rounds. The only way he was going to do that was to totally fix his field goal percentage, and it's gone the other way. What I'll say here is, I don't think he's this bad. He's number 92 right now in 9-cat. I think he comes back up towards the top 75 pretty easily. A couple of good games will get him into that range. But last year's Donovan Mitchell is this year's Donovan Mitchell. You're looking at a guy who's a number 60 to number 65 fantasy dude who scores a ton, steals a ton, gets you some threes, but the field goal percent is going to drag you into your grave. So there's the, that's the shortest answer I could come up with that one. Is it time to cut Batum? Yeah, probably. Weirdest thing ever, huh? I didn't end up with him anywhere. He was getting drafted earlier than I was hunting for him, but man, damn, I thought he'd be better than this. I figured he'd be a nice, easy top 80, top 90 kind of guy, and he's number 132. So, yeah, I guess so. You know, he had his one good game on his birthday, and then he's gone back to just being a ghost. I don't know what's wrong. Something has to be because he's disappeared. Taurean Prince is on waivers in my league. Should I pick him up? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think he'll be standard league value when he actually settles in. Like I said a minute ago, he's probably top 90 range guy, and that's worth using. I let go of Juancho Hernan-Gomez. Did I make a mistake? Nah, man. Denver's got 3 studs coming back in the next week or two, and then all of these guys we've been hemming and hawing about are just going to disappear. Will Donovan Mitchell take a step forward here in year 2? Nope. Simple on that one. That's from Roddy. Marco says, DeAndre Ayton or John Collins rest of season. Also, I traded Blake Griffin for Otto Porter. Was that a good move? Well, if Otto was healthy, I'd say yes, but I'm a little bit worried about his knee. In a vacuum, yes. In a 9-cat format, absolutely. DeAndre Ayton for me over John Collins, just because of the percentages, honestly. We don't know what Collins is going to do at the free throw line. We knew Ayton was going to be okay at the foul line, and so far he's been that. So I like Ayton, and he's been playing well lately. Field goal percentage, terrific. DeAndre's got my vote. Will Mitchell Robinson have an impact when the playoffs come around in a head-to-head league? Is he worth squatting on? I actually am squatting on him in a format where I can put him on my injured list because I do think at some point New York is going to have to turn it over. For sure, they're trying to move in as Cantor. He's not part of the future out there. And so, yeah, he's a guy I think will have an impact in the fantasy playoffs. Should I sell high on Larry Nance? Yes, but also it's really hard. I think it was either yesterday or the day before in the podcast I talked about using him as a kicker in a trade. Like, hey, here's a 2-for-1. I'm going to give you a 5th rounder, and Larry Nance, you give me back a 4th rounder. He's a baby upgrade. He's like throwing a little salt, a good salt. He's like throwing a little, let me use a different analogy here. He's like the cherry on the top of your trade offer. He's not the whole cake. He's the cherry. Monte Morris versus Derek White for the rest of the season. I don't want either of those guys. Neither. Can I vote for neither? Is Jeremy Lamb for C.J. McCollum as ridiculous a deal as I thought when it was offered? No, actually, it's not. C.J. McCollum is not your top 35 guy anymore. That season was the outlier. He's more of a top 60 guy, and Jeremy Lamb, to me, is more of a top 60 guy. So I actually think that's a pretty fair trade. McCollum's going to score more, and Jeremy Lamb is going to do the more efficient stuff. Better free throw number, lower turnovers. In an 8-cat format, yeah, you give McCollum the edge. 9-cat, it's a pretty fair trade. It just sort of depends on team needs at that point. So, no, not that crazy. Another Thomas Bryant question. As I mentioned before, I think he's more of a 14 to 16 team guy. I don't think he's a 12. And Joe says, what's your view on Malik Monk in a dynasty league? Seems like his minutes continue to fluctuate wildly with some DNPs. Yeah, he's a shooter. That's basically it. I don't think it's... the question here says, is the second coach here deciding not to emphasize him? Is that a bad sign? No, not really. His game is a little bit more limited. Like Miles Bridges has more he can do. He can defend better. He can slash better. He can dunk more. Monk is not the athletic young guy on that team that Miles Bridges is. Malik has the pure stroke, and to me, he fits more of a role player situation where if the Hornets move on from guys like Batum or Lamb, if/when contracts expire for those guys, yeah, then you could see Malik Monk slide in as a nice floor spacer, but that's more of his role going forward. So I'm not ultra high on him in Dynasty. I think you're going to see him fill more of a shooter's role, whereas a guy like Miles Bridges, I think he's a guy that could develop into more of a star. Neither one of them looks like future superstar, but to me, Bridges looks to be the guy with the higher ceiling. And we did it, guys. We got through the mailbag. I think that was all of them. And if I missed your question, I'm really sorry. That was everything that Twitter put in front of me. Feel free to send it to me again on Twitter and just say, hey, Dan, didn't make your mailbag because Twitter's stupid. Answer my question here, and I will. Ladies and germs, have a wonderful day after Christmas. I hope you guys are fighting off the eggnog burps and work is going okay. Big Wednesday tonight. I will obviously talk some more about gambling on Twitter if that's what you're into. And, of course, I'll do a What to Watch For tweet as well. At Dan Besbris on Twitter. Give me a follow if you haven't already. At HI Kona Coffee. Again, massive thank you to our sponsor here. First sponsor on the podcast, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. I am Dan Besbris. I will talk to you tomorrow. Micah Patria on the show tomorrow. Brewski on Friday. DFS contest on Friday. I'll start ramming that down your throats as soon as we get the room open. And now, I officially say for real this time. See you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.